Hello everyone. This video is going to be all about using Excel to do a linear programming question. The theme of the question is going to be creating some cakes. That's something that we all know something about. Let's get it all nice and pretty. All right, so in cake, let's give it a heading. Cake example. All right, so the first thing we need to know in creating cakes, of course, what type of cakes? It could be everything. It could be anything from chocolate cake, vanilla cake, strawberry cake. So let's call our decision variable the what, the product, the units, number of units, the items. So this could be any flavored cake, but let's keep it nice and simple. Let's call it cake 1 up to cake 5. So the computer's going to work out for us how many of each of these cakes are we actually going to make. As the Excel's going to do it for us, let's make it yellow. So we're going to have 5 different answers going there. But one of the conditions that we do need to know that does affect the answer is what's the profit per cake. When we sell these cakes for pure profit, what are we going to get from it? So for cake, let's make up some numbers. The numbers themselves don't really matter. Let's say we'll keep it nice and cheap. $4 for every cake 1. 6. Make the last cake the most profitable, I guess. There we go. There's some nice basic numbers. They could actually be anything. Sometimes profit could actually be split into 2 additional rows. It could be revenues and costs, but I'm not concerned about that with this particular example. What else we do need to know is if we know the quantity and the profit, then the combination of both of those is going to be what we call our objective function. We are trying to maximize profit. What gives us the most profit? So that answer can go here. Let's call it the objective function. Now this, we're going to have to actually make a formula. And as we sort of know, if we just pretend we are making one of each cake, then the profit that will give us will be 4 plus 6 plus 3 plus 7 plus 10. Nice numbers, it'll be 30. So let's make a formula for that. So I've got to start with, in H4, I've got to start with equals. And I have to multiply the quantity by the price. And then add on the next cake. Add on next cake. Hopefully you can see the pattern. So we've got the combination of B3 and B4, and then add on C3 and C4, and add on D3 and D4, and away we go. So we could have as many cakes as what we wanted. There's one thing I want to do now that's a bit special. I'll explain it in a little while, but I want to fix or make an absolute cell reference to the quantities, row 3. So I want to put dollar signs with B3 and C3, D3, E3, F3. We'll see why in a little while. But as stated, there's the answer. If we know the quantity, we're going to know the maximum profit that we're going to achieve. So let's get rid of that, as we don't. So if one of the conditions we have to consider is the profit, another one is what are the constraints? What is limiting us in that we have to consider when we make these cakes? Another word for constraint quite often can be the ingredients of the product. That can be one factor. Well, we've made cakes before, so let's come up with some nice basic ingredients. I mean, we could have chocolate, of course, or something fancy, but let's go with the obvious. That'll do. So in this particular example, we could have as many cakes as what we wanted to. We can have as many constraints as what we want, but 5 and 5 is enough. All right, so how much milk goes into each of these cakes? Make up some numbers. 4 cups for cake 1, 2 cups for cake 2, 1 cup for cake 3, 5 and 4. So knowing that, we're going to have to work out how many cups are we going to use. Well, that's going to go there. But we're going to need to know how many cups did we have in total. If you went to your kitchen and you opened up your fridge, how much milk do you have at your disposal? let's say we've got 280 cups, which could be X number of litres. Get that spotting right. And while we're here, might as well, let's center everything. I am a fan of centering. Okay, we'll get that ready later. If you haven't done that, you can do that later. All right, sugar. How much sugar is going into each cake? Again, we'll just make up the numbers. This could be teaspoons, it could be all tablespoons, all kinds of things. Let's say there's no sugar in cake 4, so it can be blank, it can be 0. And again, we need to know how much sugar do we have in our kitchen. Let's go 300. I mean, while we're here, how many eggs do we have? Let's say we've got 80 eggs. It's got a lot of storage space. 250 flour, 190 cups of cream. And we can get the answers that will eventually go there. And now we're just making up more numbers again. Okay, those numbers went up. Finally, the cream. Stick in a 0, why not? All right, so again, if we could now know, if we did know the quantity of how many cakes, how many of each cake, then we know the amount of milk that we used. So again, if we used 1 of each, we already know what the profit was, which was 30. But now we know how much milk did we use. 4 plus 2 plus 1 plus 5 plus 4, which gives us 16. But we need a formula to do that. And I could do it the same way I did the profit formula. Now it's quantity times milk, but instead we can copy it and we can paste it. Now, as we look at what we've got, we know it's 16, not $16. It's going to be 16 units of milk. But look at the formula up the top. Notice because we put dollar signs at B3, it stayed there. But with the how much milk, instead of profit, it's now moved to milk, which is what we wanted to do because we didn't put dollar signs there. Which means if I copy it to, again, it's going to those E7s, those 7s are going to change to 8s for the sugar, which saves us a lot of time and effort. They're relative cell references as different to an absolute cell reference. When you make something absolute, you don't want it to move when you copy it and paste it to another location. But with a relative cell reference, you want it to move based on where you're working, and we're now working in row 7. The next copy is going to change all those to row 8, row 9, row 10, row 11. I'll just quickly show you. So let's copy it, paste, 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 paste. And as we quickly see at the top, there's B7, now it's B8, now it's B9, now it's B10, now it's B11. So let's quickly fix these. I'll format those cells. Let's make them a general number. It's not money that we're talking about. Center them. Okay, so yes, that does, it is working. If we make 1 of each cake, we have $30 profit, and we know that we've used 16 milk, 24 sugar, 14 eggs. But again, we're not using everything at our disposal. We have a lot left over, a lot of wastage. And we are also trying to minimize wastage. We do not want wastage. Wastage can be very costly. So the computer will also work that out for us. Excel will. While we're dealing with constraints, what other constraints can we have? Let's call it special constraints. What are special constraints? Well, you're not always limited by your ingredients of the product or how much material you have. It can also be the product itself. So let's say cake 1. So I'm focusing on cake 1. So I'll put a 1 there. Let's get it ready. So in this case, let's say that out of the cakes that we are producing, because it's not pointing to an ingredient, it's pointing to the cake. So let's say we have to produce 5 or more of these cakes. Maybe we've got a purchase order from a company or a customer, or whatever it may be, but it's just another rule. So rules can be based on the component itself, the actual product. So whatever answer this is here, it has to be at least 5 or above. Let's do another similar one. Let's go with cake 3. So now I'm focusing here. I want to focus on cake 3. The way we're doing this, there's another way to do it, but I'm just trying to be consistent with what it is that we're seeing. Let's go the other direction. Whatever this answer is, that will match the answer in D3. It'll match it here. We don't want to produce any more than 10. Okay, we don't know why, we don't care, it's just another rule. Let's be a bit silly. Let's look at all the odd numbered cakes. So now I'm focusing on cake 1, cake 3, and cake 5. So I'm looking at the total production of all of those cakes. Okay, so let's go with a minimum amount again. So I'm changing it again. Let's say I have to have more than 15. We don't care what combination it is. It doesn't have to be equal. We don't care if one cake's dominant, but the total number of those cakes must be at least 15. One more we can do. Let's say cake 2 has to be more than cake 4. So this is a number of ways you can do this one, but I want to focus on cake 2. So I'm now being a little bit different. And that cake 2 has to be, for sake, let's say it can be equal. So safely now I can use this symbol again. So in the comparison between those two cakes, the even cakes, I want cake 2 to at least be equal or more than cake 4. So this one, I'm not typing 4 because I don't know how many cake 4 I'm producing. So now I need to point to equals. I need to point to, well, in fact, I can leave that blank for the time being. So if I'm making 2 of cake 4, then this number has to be more than that number. The last set are called non-negatives. Based on what version of software you're using, it is possible that some of your cake solutions can be positive numbers, but some of them, if not set up correctly, could actually be negative. But yet the totals still do match. So for example, of course, we have negative sugar. So we just have to make a rule to say, hang on, we know that's not possible. So they're called non-negative. So we have to apply that to each cake. No cake can have a negative production. So I want cake 1, cake 2, cake 3, cake 4, cake 5. Each cake must be greater than 0. The cake can be 0, don't make the cake, that's quite possible, but that will stop us from having any negative solutions. All right, so that is nearly ready to go. I can make this a little smaller. And there's our base model. We've got our decision variables based on some profit. We have our core ingredients. We have something special concerning those cakes themselves, the products, and then make sure that we cannot get negative answers. All right, so the only thing we've got missing here is I've got formulas for the constraints. Here, it is quite similar, and we can set it up the same way as we did these. So that's why I use the same sort of pattern. So again, I can copy that formula, and where they were 11s, as you can see up there, the B11, C11, D11, all up here. Now these are going to be 14s. And there they are. And keep copying. 15s. Finally, 17s, row 17. Now it doesn't matter because we left the rest blank. Out of that formula, it's only focusing on where the ones are. So that's focusing on the C calculation, which is just here. So now it's saying grab C3, which is here, cake 2, multiply it by 1, or this one. So it's not changing the number, we're just grabbing the quantity. But for this one, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm comparing cake 2 and cake 4. I'm going to point to cake 4. because we don't know what that answer is anyway. But I do know that this number will be more than this number. Again, with this, we could still apply the same formula. Copy, you can copy anyone you want. Paste, 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 paste. So we've gone all the way up to the very final formula. It's still based on the original quantities, but we're only focusing on cake 5. So whatever answer that is, it will be multiplied by 1. The answer will go here, and the answer will be at least equal to 0 or more than 0. So now we are ready to go. So we'll do the actual calculation. We're going to use a little app in Excel called Solver. And in the data tab, it should be appearing here. And if it doesn't, you'd have to look up on the internet your version of Excel and your operating system, because it can change. The steps can be slightly different. But for this version of Office, File, Options, Add-ins. We do want some add-ins. The one we want is Solver, but for other reasons today, I'm just adding the analysis tool pack. You can actually select all 4. Okay. And there it is. So we want Solver. We want to find a solution. Let's click and go. So now we just have to connect these two of what we designed versus all of our inputs. Set the objective. The objective. Where is the objective function going to go? Where is it? Where is that answer? Well, we want to maximize profit. So we point to H4. $H, $4. What are our variables? There's our variables. Everything from B3 up to F3. The constraints have to be added one at a time. Right? Add. First constraint. The milk is less than 280. Whatever answer that may be. And the next one. Sugar less than 300. Eggs will be less than 80. Flour will be less than 250. Cream will be less than 190. Cake 1 must be more than 5. Cake 3 must be less than 10. The odd cakes in total must be more than and equal to 15. Cake 2 must be at least equal to or more than cake 4. As this points to this, this is pointing to cake 4. And finally, the non-negatives. Cake 1 must be more than 0. Cake 2 must be more than 0. Must be more than 0. Now you can argue, like for example in cake 1, we didn't really need that rule because the production is more than 5 anyway. But we're just keeping it as a system, following patterns. All right, what are we up to? We're up to row 22, so let's go for row 23. Cake 4 must be more than 0. And finally, the final one, cake 5 must be more than 0. Okay. So we've got all the criteria in, we've got all of those constraints, which is really all the yellow down here. And again, we didn't really need to do the non-negative because we've got this tick box here. But again, it depends on the version that you're using. Just do a simple linear programming method in order to find the answer. And now we just click solve. Okay, so what have we got? Quite an interesting answer. We've got some range of decimals. So the quantity is going to be 11 of cake 1, 48 of cake 2, no cake 3s, less than 1 of cake 4, 3.5 of cake 5s. There's our profit. And that's how much of the ingredients we used. We used up all of the sugar, all of the eggs, all of the flour, a little bit of the cream. In terms of the cakes, did the rules of the products work? Yes, there's the same number, and it had to be more than 5, and it is. The third cake had to be less than 10. Yeah, well, don't make it. That's pretty good. The combination of those cakes must be more than 15. Well, once we add up even the decimal amounts, so we're just going by the maths, we get 15. Cake 2 has to be more than cake 4. Well, cake 4 is a little bit silly. I mean, we might play a little bit and change the answer, but that is technically true. And finally, all the numbers are either 0 or above. So what we have to do here, we can keep that answer, and I want my answer report and sensitivity report. And once I click OK, it'll appear down here, my 2 extra reports. But I just want to go back and play a little bit with these numbers because we've used formulas, and I cancelled it. So I said, let's make that 350. Let's make that 120. And we can very quickly solve it again, find the solution again. Okay, there's some nicer numbers. So we've got 5, 36 and 2/3, just over 7 and 10. All the numbers still match out again. This one's a little bit better in terms of the comparison. 36 cake 2s, 7 of cake 4s, and it sort of rings true. Just like before, don't make cake 3. We could change the profit amounts, we can change the ingredients, we can change what cake we're focusing on, we can change whether it has to be above or below something. But I'm happy with this answer, so let's put in the 2 reports, click OK, and there's our answer, and there's the answer report, which mimics everything. Our profit is 390, the quantity of each cake is the same as what we said before. Are we looking at we've got some wastage going on. We've got 104 wastage of cream. Let's have a look. Those 2 differences, 104. So we're talking everything about our objective, our variables, our constraints, and notice those numbers. So it's interesting, it's picked up the word objective function. So it's grabbed that heading. So if I move the heading, if I moved it to there, and if I reran it, we wouldn't get that heading in all the reports, but you can. Just do this. So that constraint is purely based on the flour. That's fine, I'll leave it like that. In the sensitivity report, we've got our 2 sensitivity reports. Everything about, there's the pricing and the increase and the decrease of that pricing. Here we've got our, what if we change something about our constraints in terms of how much of each constraint do we have and adjusting that constraint. So there you go, I hope that helped, and thanks for watching.